Go live? Okay, so first of all, we acknowledge that the land upon which we gather is unceded Mi'kmaq territory. So call to order, and I want to thank you for coming in this evening. There are only two items, but one item is for the host and the FCM, and I think they need some kind of response ASAP. That's the purpose of calling for this meeting. We could have had it at noon, however, 5 o'clock is what we looked at. It maybe in the future could be a noon hour. Just get together quickly. Okay, any declarations of conflict of interest on the two items? None. Okay. The agenda has 4A, Economic Tourism and Cultural Development Committee resolutions, A, Arts Advisory Board amendments to the terms of reference, and I think Doug Demay is overseeing that or will answer questions. Hosting the FCM Board of Directors meeting. It's a bid submission, and it's Laurel Lee. Moved? Moved. Seconded by Council. Okay, moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? Okay, Councillor Tweel, yea or nay?
In favor.
Councillor Drawn?
In favor.
Okay. So, can we go to the 4A Arts Advisory Board? Eleanor, is there anything that you want to add to that? Read the resolution? Okay, we'll put the resolution on the floor first, and then if there are any questions, please bring them up. So
I know, but it's the first one on the
it
agenda.
should be in your package.
If that's. Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, Economic Tourism and Cultural Development Resolution number 1. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Be it resolved that Council approve the attached amended terms of reference for the Arts Advisory Board, effective immediately.
Okay, any questions? Okay, Councillor Beck, and then followed by Deputy Mayor. Just one second, Deputy Mayor Yankov. I just have to get down here. Okay. Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to refresh my memory, I know we recently passed a lot of committees. I can't remember. I know within this, it's within minimum of 5, maximum of 8 on the Arts Advisory Board. Did we recently, can you just refresh my memory, did we recently nominate this board, or does it have to be filled?
It was part of the package of committees, advisory committees, agencies, boards that were recommended to council, and then it was followed up on June 12th with some additions or changes.
Yeah.
And Doug, how many members? 7 members on the board, correct?
Correct, yes.
Right. And do you have a chair yet?
Yes, we do. We have a chair, Monica Lacey.
Who is it?
Monica Lacey.
Okay. Good, sir. Okay. Deputy, you were there and then gone. Go ahead.
Thank you. When I was reviewing the policy, it looks great. I'm just wondering, I didn't see, and maybe I just didn't read it correctly. I'm looking for that communication piece on the voice of the, this committee and various other committees. I would assume that the members of the committee would report back to their staff person, and then through council would be disseminated to the public, any kind of communication pieces and updates in terms of how this, like that we don't have committee members out speaking on behalf of the city, and I'm just wondering how that piece will work. Thank you.
Mr. DeMay? Or do you want to hand it back to the CAO? What's your preference?
I'm happy to
Go ahead.
answer from my perspective, but also hand it off if our CAO wanted to add anything. So just to make sure I understand your question, Deputy Mayor Yankov, you just wanted clarity on the role of the Arts Advisory Board in relation to communications, speaking to the public. Yeah. So our communications protocols are generally that it, as far as I understand, is offered to the committee chair, or depending on the item. And then there's only few instances, I believe, that members of arts advisory boards are in situations where they speak to the media. And all that goes through our communications process and our communications policies. But I'm happy to reiterate to the Arts Advisory Board their role in relation to media and ensuring that if they are approached by media or anything, that they are routed through our communications department.
Thank you very much for that clarification. And I'm just wondering, should that be included in the terms of reference, or is this just a blanketed city policy? Just as a follow-up, Your Worship.
So, Eleanor, Eleanor, I think that the deputy's looking at an overall policy for all agencies, boards, and committees, including Planning Board, Heritage Board, and that's two areas, including design review, that you answer to. Anything to add to CAO, Eleanor?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think it would be a separate policy, maybe attached to our current communications policy, which I think references staff, but maybe not these advisory committees. So we would just add a new section into that policy to address that. It's a good point. Thank you.
Councillor Ramsey?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And I was just going to echo the Deputy Mayor's comments, because in the past, they did sort of spoke for the city, like some of the advisory boards, and because I know I had one issue with them there 4 years ago. But anyway, like, that's a great point for bringing that up there, Councillor Yankoff. And this is just basically housekeeping, right? Like everything in red, like there's some words that had to be changed and so on and so forth, like other terms of references. Is that the proper wording is all in there?
Doug, do you want to answer that?
Sorry, Doug.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ramsey. So the purpose of these changes was just to ensure that there was some clarity on the reporting structure, just make sure that things that were usually requirements of the Arts Advisory Boards are just stated explicitly, just to make sure that those are all clear in the terms of reference. So there was the addition of a mandate, changes to the reporting structure, clarity on role and responsibilities, as well as details on membership composition and who's voting and who's non-voting, just to make sure that it was all written and aligned with our public appointment policy as well.
Councillor Beck?
I was just going to say the same thing there, that I thought that under section 3, under the reporting structure, that I think that's basically their lane is to report to the committee. So stay in your lane. And that would be where to go with it. And, you know, maybe there might be something added on there. I don't know about communications, but I think that's pretty clear that this is, they're an advisory board only. They are to work through the council committees and to stick to that. That's kind of the way I read it.
Yes. Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Twill, go ahead.
I'd like to reiterate what Councillor Beck said. It was always understood that the advisory committees, like this particular committee, for example, would report directly to the standing committee. So in this particular case, this advisory board would report directly to economic development, tourism, and special events. That's always been the understanding, with previous advisory committees. I mean, there's a number of them, and they report directly to the standing committee.
Good point, Councillor Twill, because I'm looking at page 3 of the document. Do you have the document, Councillor Duran? And Councillor Twill? So it says the chair shall act as spokesperson for the board. So I'm assuming that's the chair of the Standing Committee for Economic Development, correct?
Exactly.
No, I'm getting a clarification.
Yeah. Well, I think
No,
I think Councillor Beck.
yeah, Councillor Twill,
think-
no, that, I'm just trying to clarify it, and I'm just asking Doug Dumais if, where it states the chair shall act as spokesperson for the board, because the wording before is at the request of staff or council, the chair shall report to the relevant standing committee or council on matters related to the board's terms of reference. Can we clarify the chair?
Sure, happy to clarify. So that statement, the chair shall act as a spokesperson for the board, is a reference to the chair of the Arts Advisory Board, and they act as a spokesperson for the board to the committee that they report under. So that's just in order for there to be clarity as to the chair's role is to report to that standing committee, and it would be the chair who's the spokesperson for the board in general. And then further clarity on the Section 3 reporting structure is, just the wording is the board shall report to City Council through the Economic, Tourism, and Cultural Development Standing Committee. So they, council, I guess I would add that the Arts Advisory Board is meant to be a resource to council on all items related to arts and culture, as the terms of reference outline. So council could request that there be a presentation by the Arts Advisory Board to council or otherwise, but mainly the key is that they report through that standing committee.
Councillor Twill, did you get that? Did you hear it?
Yeah, I think we need to be a little more specific. Just to make sure we understand what the process and what the procedure is. So the advisory boards, and in this particular case, would report directly to the economic development, tourism, and special events. Their report would be included in council's package under that particular committee and forwarded on to council for information purposes and to question any of the initiatives or any projects that they're working on, or any recommendations bringing forward to that particular standing committee. That's always been the understanding and the procedure that we've operated under.
Okay, I'm just trying to get clarification from the CAO and from Doug Dumais, who sits on the board, the Arts Advisory Council Board. So is that clear, like, that the reporting has to go to the chair of the board, but that chair reports to the chair of the standing committee, in this case, economic development, festival events, tourism?
Well, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, can I just, Councilor, I'm just trying to get a clarification from the CAO and Doug. Is that correct?
Thank you, Your Worship. So under Section 3, it's quite clear. It says the reporting structure. The board shall report to the City Council through Economic, Tourism, Cultural Development Standing Committee, and has the authority to make recommendations to council through this standing committee. And I think the line of question is that where it says that the chair shall act as a spokesperson of the board. Maybe to clarify that, we could just amend it slightly and just say, act as a spokesperson for the board at the Economic, Tourism, and Cultural Development Standing Committee. Just to be clear, they're not acting as a spokesperson outside of their role, only at that committee
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, and
Did you hear that, Councilor Twill?
I did. And I just want to maybe just expand a little further. That I would even suggest, whenever they have something significant to report, or maybe on a quarterly basis, there'd be a joint meeting between the advisory board and the respective standing committee to open up the lines of communications and again talk about particular initiatives and opportunities and options that they're working on, and how the standing committee can be of assistance. But I think it's really important that the minutes of all their meetings is sent directly to the respective standing committee.
Councillor Tweel, I think that has been occurring for the last 4 years now, going on 5 years. The minutes part of the package, similar to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, they did go to, I believe, strategic priorities and then planning. So, yeah, I think those.
Yeah, but what happened was in the past, though, I think Councillor Ramsey alluded to it. What was happening was not, I don't want to stereotype all the members of these different advisory committees, but sometimes it became very political, and as a member of council, it was caught completely off guard because statements were being made on social media. So I think we got to be cognizant of that fact, Mayor Brown. We understand clearly what the roles and responsibilities are, because the mandate is with City Council to collectively make the decisions as a unified body. So I don't think in some cases that discipline was that structure and discipline was adhered to. I'm not saying that happened all the time, but there were occasions. So I just wanted to bring those concerns and those suggestions to the table.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. And just my last point maybe would be, just building on what my comments were before, maybe then just for a little clarification, although I know that CAO Mohammed had indicated that perhaps it would be a separate piece in the communications policy around this, but could there be some piece of communication around that further to, any communication to the public would be immediately directed to our senior communications department to then disseminate out to the appropriate way to which communication goes out to the public, whether that is reaching out to the counselor who chairs that committee or, however that might be.
Yeah, the point's very clear. It's that, and that these incidents did happen in the last council, where chairs were speaking on behalf of the advisory committee, but not going through the proper channel, which was the standing committee responsible for it, and in the end, coming here to council. So I understand where the issue's going because of past experiences. Have CAO, Eleanor, have you trapped some of that? Like, I'd like to have this going through tonight. Or if we don't, we'll have to take it back at our June 10th meeting. But it's just, Doug, it's no reflection of the work that you've done on it. It's great work, but it's a concern that we want to get addressed. CAO and then Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, Your Worship. So what I might suggest is, as this terms of reference stands, it's a good terms of reference. And what I'm hearing are actually larger themes than just this advisory committee. So it sounds like we need an update to the communications policy. But the other thing I'm hearing, which is actually quite common for most advisory boards to have to sign, is a code of conduct in terms of communications and
Just 1 second, Councillor Tweel.
as part of volunteering with the city in this kind of position.
Councillor Tweel, Councillor Ramsey's on first. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
just my second opinion on this is just that the key word here is advisory. So, and that's the thing that we can't lose sight of. Like these groups that we have on here, they bring ideas and they're hearing more out there too, but their point is to bring it to the standing committee, and then from then on, it moves to the original.
Moves to where?
The chair of the certain committee, if it's public works or if it's whatever it is. But we're talking about the arts tonight. But the key word is it's advisory.
Correct.
And that's where I think Councillor Tweel was sitting around a few years ago when I was there too, and like one group really got into the press and sort of took things by themselves. So this is what we're trying to avoid, is that they got to bring it to their group, and then the chair speaks on it, if they agree or if they don't agree. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Tweel.
I think that's exactly what I'm aiming for, because there was confusion, there was conflict, there was misunderstanding, And what it did was it pitted some of these advisory committees or certain members of these advisory committees against decisions that city council were making or looking at, and lots of times council has more information because we're making hopefully informed decisions, and comes back to what your role and responsibility is. And I think Councillor Ramsey hit the nail on the head. They're advisory members. We are the council is the elected body. We take all the information into consideration, and then we'll make an informed decision.
Okay, so are we asking Doug to revamp it, or do we just go with the amendment that the CAO suggested? Councillor Beck and then Deputy Mayor Yankoff.
Can I just suggest a line to add under 3? And I do, not to dismiss anything, Doug and Laurel here, you did a great job, so we're not nitpicking anything here. It was just trying to address this point. We can say maybe, I appreciate what CAO Eleanor said too about how the advisory committees all have to have their own code of conduct, which is great as well too. Just looking at this in terms of reference, might we add,
Councillor Beck, are you on
I'm on page 1,
number 3?
number 3,
Number 2?
reporting structure.
Okay,
So
number 3.
something like all external communications shall be conducted through the chair of this committee, just a line like that. Is that something that would, if we're looking to include it somewhere, would it, because they're talking about running it through the economic committee, excuse me, and then the standing committee makes the recommendations through the council, and then any further communication about that would be done through the chair of that committee. Just a thought.
Okay,
If we're looking to include it somewhere, I'm just looking to place it somewhere, that's all.
okay. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'm perfectly satisfied with CAO Mohammed's recommendation that the policy itself is spot on, and that just anyone in any of the agencies, boards, and committees would just sign a code of conduct that aligns with the city's policies and procedures. And so I'm fine. I think Mr. Domey has done a fantastic job of it. And as long as we have that other housekeeping piece done, I'm quite happy with as it is.
Councillor Mattard?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think we've kind of going around and around on the same thing here. So just to kind of wrap up on that, it's, I think as CAO Eleanor mentioned, I think it's probably applicable to all of the advisory board committees. And I think it should be at a higher level as a statement in our communications policy, and maybe just a reference to that in here as in that. But I don't think we would need to put something in, because then we have to revisit all of these terms of references for each of the, and ensure the same language exists in there. Because we'd be singling out this particular one in that type of language. That's just kind of where I feel on it. But I think in general, the terms of reference here are good and outline roles and responsibilities very well. I think from the communication perspective, I think we can roll that right up to a general statement.
So the communications would go through your standing committee, Councillor Beck. It's strategic priorities, communication, and intergovernmental cooperation. So, and I would like to add also that we should have onboarding sessions with our advisory committee members about responsibility to the advisory committee, agency, and board, and that when they speak, they're not only speaking on their own, they're speaking on behalf of the city. So that could be incorporated in the policy that we could look at through Standing Committee for Strategic Priorities, Communication, and Intergovernmental Cooperation. So we'll vote on it as is.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Councillor Beck, were you making an amendment? You suggested adding an addition. Were you?
Go ahead, dear.
Were you looking to making an amendment to this policy?
And I just threw it on the table as a consideration. I'm not really putting anything formal forth. I'm fine with leaving it and addressing it on a broader level and keeping it applicable. Because I agree with Councillor Matar. We'd have, as I'm thinking through this, we probably should have something very similar in all our terms of references with regards to this. But it can be addressed in another way. I was just trying to offer up something here to satisfy the concerns that might have been addressed here tonight. But I'm fine with going ahead with what we have.
Councillor Tweel, I'm going to get Eleanor just to repeat what she said about that this is a higher level answer to what we're discussing here. CAO, Eleanor, you just want to repeat that whole communications piece?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the one thing that I had suggested for a change in this particular one was just adding that the chair shall act as a spokesperson to the board, make sure I get the committee name right, for the Economic, Tourism, and Cultural Development Standing Committee. So just that clarification's in there. And then there'd be a separate document that all advisory committee members sign, which is a code of conduct. And I've just, as we've been discussing here, flipping through, and it's very common in municipalities for anyone who's on an advisory board, a public-facing board, that they do sign a code of conduct, so we can easily prepare that they would sign off on. That would be all committee members. And then we'll also look at the communications policy to see if we can add a piece in there about advisory committees as well. Thank you.
Good? C'est bon? Okay. Thank you, Doug. Job well done. So, does this require a vote? It does. So, moved, second. Who's going to call the question? Call the question? Question's called, sir. Question's called. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Councillor Tweel.
In favor?
Councillor Drawn.
In favor?
Thank you. And we have item number 2. CAO Eleanor Mohammed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Economic, Tourism, and Cultural Development Resolution number 2, moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Be it resolved that Council endorse the submission of a bid to host the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Board meeting in Charlottetown, September 2025 or 2026. And if successful, and as per the RFP document, Council agrees to be responsible for the costs associated with hosting a welcome reception or dinner, computer equipment or a technician, study tours if offered, and local transportation if required, estimated at approximately $30,000 exclusive of study tour expenses if offered. And further, the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
So it's on Councillor Ramsey and Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could you put that up again, Tracy? Sorry. It just blocked out on me. So that's being at the FCMs for years. It's a fantastic tool for all of council to learn from and everything like that. And I'll certainly be in favor of this. I just hope that we have enough rooms because they draw between 3,000 people, don't they?
No, this is the
Oh,
board.
I thought it was the whole FCM.
And
That's why it blew me out of the water.
And
I'm sorry, Laura.
Laura, can you just tell us how many members are with the board? I'm thinking the same thing until I reread it here. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. So there's approximately 150 people that will come on peak nights that are associated with the board.
Okay. Councillor Beck.
I too would be supportive. I think it's great that we have the opportunity to do this, and it's we would never be able to host an FCM here because of the magnitude of the scope of it. So it's nice that we're able to, or cities that are able to host it that are unable to host FCM. So at least to get some sort of flavor for it. My question's focus is just around the study tours. I know they were A lot of them were quite extensive at FCM. Some of them ended up getting canceled because of whatever reason. Whose responsibility is that? And would that be a contracted out thing, or would that be the city staff being responsible for figuring out what might be of interest here in terms of study tours for Charlottetown?
So Lauralee, I believe, Councilman McKinnon, you are the chair. We're just going to go through you to her. Is that okay?
Yeah, no question. Go ahead with Laurel.
Sorry about that, Councillor McKinnon.
So, Councillor Beck, study tours, as the RFP outlines, aren't a required part of the bid, which is why we haven't gone into a whole lot of detail on them. If we are successful in obtaining the hosting rights for one of the board meetings, what we've traditionally done in the past is there would be an internal committee that would be struck that would be made up of representatives of the Economic Development, Tourism and Cultural Development Committee. We've named that several times this evening. And also other relevant staff to determine whether the agenda for the board meetings would allow for study tours and if we have anything that we feel would be worthy of having the board take part in. So that would be a larger conversation, and it would likely be handled by staff, not outsourced, but that would be a conversation that we would have based on what the extent of the potential study tours were.
Great. Thank you, Laurel.
Okay. Councilor Tart? Yeah, just one second. Councilor Tart, then we'll get back to who called out there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the chair, just for clarification, is this a multi-year event, or is it bidding on either 2025 or 2026 Board of Directors meeting? 2 a year, yeah. I put that to the
Laurie?
chair. Who wants to?
Good?
Thank you, Councillor. So the RFP is for the next 4 board meetings that are up for bid. So there's 2 in 2025, 2 in 2026, and we would be bidding on 1. We've identified the September board meetings as being of preference just due to airlift at that time of the year versus March.
Okay, thank you. And just on the budget aspect of it, so you'd be looking at roughly, I mean, in today's $30, which could change in the next couple of years depending on inflation and such, and costs associated with the expenses of this. And it looks like you might be looking to come out of an operational budget. Do you have that money, like, would that be somebody net new money, or would that be something be coming out of a budget that already exists, Mr. Chair?
So the budget would be accounted for in the fiscal year that the board meeting would take place. So it would go through the regular budget process that the finance department would ultimately run. The money would ultimately fall to the event management portion of the economic development budget. So that's where we typically budget to host events. That number fluctuates annually based on what we're actually hosting. So it's not necessarily new money. It'll depend on what's happening that particular year, but that is where it would fall in the operational budget.
Yeah, and I guess that's the reason for my question is, can we approve something today for a future expense that hasn't gone through the finance committee? That's, you know,
just
maybe that's a question for.
Direct that to the CAO. Well, that's her job.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Councillor Matart. You can approve it in principle today. If it turned out that the municipality was in dire circumstances or was, prioritizing something else and couldn't fund it, then we would have to back out of the response to the RFP. Unfortunately, with this kind of scenario, you have to make the commitment ahead of time, usually by a couple of years, and then you hope that your budget, you can fulfill it at that time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Twill or Councillor Duran, was it one of you that were asking?
Yeah, I have a question there.
Go ahead, sir.
Would any SURF funding be available for this, or is it strictly operational?
Councillor Duran, the intention would be that we would go to the Special Event Reserve Fund with a funding request. Typically, conferences don't qualify for funding, but as it will be a city-led conference, consideration can be given. Typically, for a national event, the maximum that the SURF committee would commit is up to $10,000. So that would be what we would be hoping to achieve.
Okay, thank you. That'd be awesome. Thank you for that.
Councillor Beck, question? Question? You called the question? Okay. All those in favor, please put up your hand. Councillor Duran, yea or nay?
In favor.
Councillor Twill, yea or nay?
In favor?
Okay. Okay. That is it. I need a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Councillor Twill, yea or nay?
In favor.
Councillor Duran?
In favor.
Okay, thank you. Have a great evening.